Okay, so good afternoon, Madhvi. Welcome to this event, Leaders and Libraries. And thank you for joining the force. We had almost 20 plus leaders part of this event, and thank you for accepting and coming on board. Pleasure to have you. Before we get started and start conversing on this powerful book, which I'm going to expose in a while, let me introduce you to the audience. So, good afternoon, everyone, and good evening, whichever part of the world that all of you are. You've been listening to a lot of leaders talking about one book that has inspired their life over the journey, amongst the many other that have also. Great insights and great learning for me personally, and also for all the viewers. It has been posted on LinkedIn on the page, and all of you have commented on it as well. Today we have yet another guest with us, Ms. Madhavi Lal, Managing Director, Head of HR for India, Deutsche Bank. I'm so happy to have her because I had spent some time in that fraternity and we were so-called ex colleagues, if you can say that, with an organization called Standard Chartered Bank, a great institution that I always revere and a great time I had as part of my earlier career days. And she has spent 10 solid years with that organization. So Madhavi, it's lovely to be having you from Standard Chartered Bank, kind of an organization, and today you're with Deutsche Bank. An avid reader, a corporate HR professional with almost 30 years of experience, solid work on the national and international platforms. A pleasure to have you, Madhavi. Thank you. Welcome on board.
Rajiv, thank you so much for having me here talk about an absolutely fabulous and insightful book.
All right, so let's get started. Um, Before we get into the book, which is a very powerful book, I'm going to ask you, how did your journey with books start? I may have to ask you to go back to probably school days or college days. Tell me, how did this association start?
I have to kind of share that, thanks to my parents as a child, I've always been a member of a library or the other, and when I grew up, really, we couldn't afford to buy books, we had to go to a library, loan it out and then read it and return it back, right? And I always dreamt about owning a library someday, so when I used to walk into the library, which was run by somebody in a garage, I used to think, oh my God, such so many books, and how do you choose? And so I thought one day I'll own a library, and so I can access many books. And as the years went by, the dream went on to say that okay, I'll have music with books, And then I thought that we should have coffee and tea in my library as well. And then a few years later, I said, okay, when I open my library, I'll have wine there, but I'm still to get to own a library, where people can read books over a coffee or a wine or something.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's been a, it's been like I like books. I would love to have a room full of books, like I always dream of this, from the floor to the ceiling, there are books lined up, and
Ah,
but space is a constraint in
the
Bombay.
British library is kind of a stuff, where it's all completely corner to corner stacked up.
Yeah, and for me, books really. I mean, since you asked about books, and you must have guessed by now, they really mean physical copies. I have to say, I'm not very fond of the e-versions and tapes. Though I love technology, and I think I love the possibilities of technology, but I like the smell and feel of real books. And while you said I'm an avid reader, I kind of like fiction more than the management books. I kind of get lost in the story, and and I kind of live the book as I read it. I do read management books, obviously in my
I'm sure,
profession I
sure.
have to, but only when they come highly recommended.
Right, right, right. Superb. So that's a long journey, a lot of books that you have read over a time. So tell me, uh, what significant role did books play in your growth journey? Any instance or any narrative that you have that you can share?
Um, so I think reading, if I were to look at why do people read and why I enjoy reading, is really you get to learn new things, new perspectives, new ways of working, and I think you also get to understand new perspectives. So, and I think from a leadership and management point of view, it keeps you abreast of the latest trends, backed by research and data. And if I look at my career, so I've kind of worked for 30 years now. If I pick up an example, when I started my career, you just look at the performance management process.
Hmm.
It was run like, and I'm sure you would have been part of that as well.
Yeah,
At the end of the year, your conversation was, what are your weaknesses? And therefore, what are the training programs to address your weaknesses? And
correct.
you identify training programs that sort of build on the weaknesses. Over the years, research proved that this is really not working very well. and organizations move to a strengths-based approach, because obviously there was research to say that
Mm.
that works better. So I think reading provides that sort of insight into what are the trends.
Mm.
It's backed up by data. It gives you a new sort of way of doing things, to be ahead of the curve, really. I
Right.
mean, you look at another example, leadership. If you look at what leadership was a few sort of, I think 30 years when I started my career, to today, that's also evolved. And I think if I look at the workplace of the future, it is
Mm.
going to be multi-generational. Okay, we're going to have 5 generations at a time working there, and if
Correct.
we don't read and keep abreast of what's happening, we won't be able to maximize the performance of the organization, really.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Makes sense, makes sense. Because I think for all of us, we have learned over the years through books. Because a lot of experience that you get in the personal life and official life, it gets accentuated by the books and the concepts that the authors talk about, especially the management books and leadership books, uh, are practical things that can be applied at work. And I'm sure you must have used a couple of them over your journey. I have also done it over my journey of leadership. So interesting. So among so many other books that we have, what made you pick this powerful book? Any
you know
special liking to this book of Marshall?
So the book that I picked was this one, and I've got a copy here. I thought I'll just sort of flash it as we
Yes, that'll be
go.
lovely.
It is What Got
Yes.
You Here Won't. It's a mirror image, so I don't know. But the book is What Got You Here Won't Get You There, and it's by Marshall Goldsmith. I think the book is inspiring in many many ways. I think it's helped me personally as well. And before I go into that, just reading a book, and understanding is one thing, of course, but when you
Hmm.
apply the learning and you see success, that's when the inspiration really comes through.
True.
So for me, this book is something that I've read and I've applied, and it's kind of, that's why it's inspirational. And if I were to say, this title itself is very compelling. It's very hard hitting.
Correct.
And Rajiv, I was thinking when you asked me to pick a book, and I said, this title is something we intuitively know. We know
Yeah.
it, you know,
Yeah.
but we've not articulated it. So Marshall's picked up and articulated that.
True.
And
True.
and the other reason I find it very inspiring and sort of I like the book really because it's very simple to read. It cuts through the action points very quickly. Some very very good examples,
Yeah.
and honestly, as you go through the book, at times you think Marshall's actually reading our minds, in some form or the other. So, so
Yeah,
to,
true.
to yeah, somehow I feel like he's able to get into our minds. And if I work, the leaders I work with, normally there are 2 books that I tell them to read. One is this book, and the other one is The First 90 Days by
Ah,
Michael D. Watkins. I
Watkins.
think if you combine the 2 books, I think you're kind of pretty much there.
I agree. I agree. And I like the word that Marshall can read the mind. He actually can, whether you pick up this book or Mojo or Triggers, any book that you talk about, he's got that lovely knack to really make you think, yeah, okay, how this guy
This is
gets.
yeah, this is me. I'm this
Yeah,
is
I can see myself, and in every page he's got this knack of slapping you, making you feel shit, man. What am I doing with myself? Okay, this is good things of me. This is I need to improve and work on. So all his books are marvelous. In fact, I was one of the lucky people to have had a chance to meet him and spend around 6, 7, 8 days
really
with him. Yeah, yeah.
very
He came
lucky.
to Bangalore as part of National Human Resource NHRD chapter of Bangalore.
Hmm.
And I was there as part of the chapter. So I quickly drove back home, picked up this book, and I said, I'm not going to lose this chance. Let me take a signature of this guy. And I had a lovely chat.
Oh, you're lucky. You're
Oh yeah,
fortunate.
actually, it was a lovely opportunity. Beautiful. So let's kind of go a little deeper into this book, talking about a couple of concepts that he talks about. Because the book itself is I ran it as a 2-day workshop. In fact, that's how I delivered it. That's how deep
Really?
it is.
Wow. Okay.
But let's talk about a couple of things. How do you see this concept of mirage of success? I will succeed. I can succeed. I choose to succeed. The concept that he talks about. He says these belief systems are natural and any individual can get stuck into it and sucked into it. I'm sure you also must have had those instances where you might have got the gravity pulling inside. How do you see this concept and how did you work on it?
Frankly, Rajiv, this is one of the areas I'm still working on, and I kind of will read out something from the book which I think is really, really powerful. This, I think it's on this page, yeah. So this is, there's an insurance company ran an ad some years ago showing a powerful grizzly bear in the middle of a roaring stream
Mm,
with his neck extended to the limit, jaws wide open, teeth flaring. The bear was about to clamp onto an unsuspecting airborne salmon
mm,
jumping upstream, and the headline read, "You probably feel like the bear." we would like to suggest you are the salmon. The ad was actually designed as a to sell disability insurance.
Yeah.
What Marshall writes is, but it struck me as a powerful statement about how all of us in the workplace delude ourselves about our achievements, our status, and our contributions.
True.
So for me, I think it's very important to always remember you're the salmon. So I kind of consciously do that. I kind of, in any situation, I think, hang on, I think I should see myself as a salmon, not the bear. So that kind of, that's the mirage of success kind of mantra that I have. And I think
Hmm.
another statement that I think is very very powerful, which he kind of talks about. It's on page 31.
Hmm.
There's a statement which is very hard hitting. He says one of the greatest mistakes of successful people is the assumption I behave this way and I achieve results.
Hmm.
Therefore, I must be achieving results because I behave this way. And then he goes on to add something else, a subsequent paragraph. He says, almost everyone I meet is successful because of doing a lot of things right. And almost everyone I meet is successful in spite of some behavior that defies common sense.
Common
I
sense.
think to me, this statement kind of, I always sort of think about this, and it's so true. We're not perfect. We all have sort of our areas for development.
True.
So I think it's always good to know what are your in spite of behaviors.
Hmm. Hmm.
you know
Hmm. Hmm.
and of course in the book he sort of talks about how you can do that. You can get that feedback from your managers, your stakeholders, your family even.
Correct.
And I can share a sort of a personal example on this.
Hmm.
When I sort of got my first big leadership role many years ago, I was very ambitious, and I still
Hmm.
am, and I was quite pushy. And I think I'm kind of toning that down a bit. I think fairly aggressive. I wanted to achieve a lot. And thankfully, I quickly realized that it's not the best way to motivate all types of people.
Right.
So some people obviously like that pushiness and got to deliver more, but some people, I think, when it caused stress for them. So I think kind of learned that quickly, and I realized that if I have to really be impactful, I have to I have to understand other people, and
Hmm.
I have to get them to be successful for me to be successful.
Hmm.
So I think that, but I'm still on this journey. I'm not perfect.
I'm sure all of us, and he also on the record says in the book that he himself is going through the cycle multiple times, though he has done so much for millions and millions of people across the world. Absolutely. Another interesting concept that I like, which is simple yet very powerful, and I would like to hear it from you, Madhavi, is he's also inspired by Peter Drucker, like all of us, who talks about this very powerful statement that we spend a lot of time telling leaders what to do or what start to do, but we never enough spend time to tell them what stop to do. Why for you is stopping something is also equally, if not more, important as much as starting something? Which
As
is
I
more
said,
tough? Is it starting or is it stopping?
earlier, this book has got so many insights. And this is one of the again the sort of very powerful sort of insights from this book.
Yes, yes.
And I think stopping actually can be a very effective strategy to move things forward
Hmm.
and sort of achieve that behavioral change. And this is somehow, I think, compared to the strengths based approach I talked about, which is basically using your strengths to manage your weaknesses.
Hmm.
And what Marshall has done in his book, I think he's identified some 20 common issues, and he calls them interpersonal annoyances, you
Yeah.
know, and these can actually be handled just by stopping some of these behaviors. So
Hmm.
the question you asked me was, is stopping good or whatever. See, I personally think that a leader needs to have three things. In fact, every human being, I think, needs to have three lists really, which is one, stop doing,
Hmm.
continue doing, and start doing.
Hmm.
And the book really, I think you don't even have to go out to look at it. The book actually tells you, what are the things, what are the 20 issues really, and you can pick up from there based on what you want to achieve. And so
Right.
the examples are so simple. Like I said, it's such a simple book. It's basically, the behaviors that are wrong are like, wanting to add too much value, trying to tell the world how smart you are as a leader, speaking when angry, very simple thing, but we don't realize it. Failing to, say thank you or express gratitude.
True.
Sometimes not listening, or
Yeah.
getting,
Yeah.
or sort of claiming credit that other people deserve or the teams deserve.
Ah.
So
Correct.
we all kind of fall, prey to some of these behaviors.
True. True.
And the advice again that is there in the book for anybody who wants to read is very simple. I think there are many, I think simple things like saying thank you, listening well, not always wanting to add value to a proposal, not speaking when angry, just thinking before you speak, and apologizing for your mistakes.
True.
And of course, I think, but fundamentally, I think to change, the first step, of course, is the desire to change.
Yeah, that's the willingness.
And if you read the book, he's talked about a person he was coaching who was not willing to change, and he told the person, I can't add value to you because you don't want to change. But that was only one instant. I think everybody wants to improve and be a better person, better leader, better human being.
Absolutely. So this also takes me to the next question, which you spoke about of adding value. He says that it's important for leaders to arrest this tendency and temptation to add value all times. And I have a question. First part is, we have enough and more experience on our shoulders. Somebody like you, Madhvi, you have been there, you have done it, so you understand the anti-banking business, HR space, etc. When you come and add value, I completely understand that you are adding value because you have got so much on your shoulders as experience and work that you have done. Yet, what is it that he trying to say when he says, arrest this temptation or the tendency to add value? What is the no in that?
No, I think I can relate to this part about wanting to add value. We all feel that we want to contribute, and having worked up the ladder, you think that, we have been there, done that, we know it all, and so we think we are trying to be helpful. I think what really happens is that when we add our inputs, the ownership of the idea shifts from the team to you.
Okay.
And the ownership of it from the team may get lost in the process. Also, I think what happens is there's a hierarchy, right? So when people hear you adding some input, they kind of think it's gospel truth. And you start to look like being directive and sort of a know-it-all, really. And I'll share an example, and then I'll talk a little bit about this bit. So a few years back, there was I was mentoring a group of high potentials, along with another senior leader, and the team came and presented the project, and I gave lots of feedback, in my enthusiasm. I said, we should make it great, from good to great and everything. And I thought I was being very helpful. The other senior colleague of mine just asked the team, he said, is this the best, or would you be able to come up with something better if you were given more time? That sort of, the team said, we'll come back to you.
Okay.
And I sort of reflected on all this, and I took feedback from my colleague, and I said, what happened? I mean, is it something that I need to learn in this process? I also spoke to the team, some of the members of the team, and I kind of realized that, it is, they felt a little bit demotivated by my giving some input. They felt that I hadn't thought, they felt that I thought that they hadn't thought through it all. So my advice is that unless you're giving input that's life-changing, I think you should sort of avoid that. I would advise all leaders to say, look back at a situation when you were presenting to a senior leader. How did the feedback and input leave you feeling? And what kind of input would motivate you, or would have motivated you? And this should really provide you some clues, as to how to handle such sessions. So I think the shifting of the idea ownership, that shouldn't happen. The team should continue to own that. So I would say, ask questions that are sort of, that help the team think, but don't sort of go into, giving too many inputs, unless of course they're life-changing or.
Right. Which means you are accountable, responsible to add value, but the value can be added in right choice of words and methods. That doesn't make the other person feel this is being thrusted down the throat, right?
I spoke about that old silo leadership.
Yeah.
So that's again the leadership shift, that is there.
Right. Makes sense. Super. So the next question is pretty linked to this. It also says that many of us have this tendency to say that, let me tell you, this will not work. मुझे fundamentally before this book I thought क्या गलत बात है, इतना तो मैंने किया है, I've done it. I know that this may work, may not work. Madhvi is going to take 1 month to finish it. Let me go and help her, telling her, Madhvi, this won't work, so that you can finish it in 15 days. I'm helping her by saving 15 days of effort and time and money and all that stuff. What is this?
Yeah, Rajiv, I mean, I'm like you, because I also, something I can relate to, and I think the context really is that, like you said, most leaders have reached where they have with all the hard work, and they've performed well, they've exceeded expectations. So the belief that we carry with ourselves is that, I've done this, if I should share my experiences so people can avoid the same pitfalls, But you have to understand a couple of things. One is things may have changed since, you handle something like this. And probably the best solution at this point, maybe that one, maybe what is being presented. And two, it, like I said earlier, it can be demotivating for the team. You know, when somebody presents and you say it's not going to work, right? So again, unless it's an absolute clear no, I would suggest best to handle sensitively, guide the team with questions
Right.
like, "Have you thought of this?" You know, and rather than saying it won't work, I think try to understand how the team has come up with that proposal, and
Right. Right.
maybe it is actually the right solution at that point
Possible.
to help the team sort of think through on their own, you know. And I think again, I think it's about ownership. The idea ownership remains with the team. They are motivated. You've got them thinking, and maybe they come back with something which is better and doable or whatever.
Right. Why are these two so important for the current budding leaders, the young leaders? It was always important. From the current context of leaders that you work with and you see them, how do you see it more important?
I think it's see the I mean, the work style has changed. The work
Mm,
environment has changed. And like I said, multi-generational workforce.
mm.
There were certain styles that our generation was used to in a leader.
So,
The current crop that's coming up actually know more than us probably. So I think it's very very important to have that openness and let the team sort of drive the project. Then you putting down a sort of directive on what is to be done.
right, right. Interesting. So let's get to the next one. I'm going to read this for you. So Marshall talks about four things. He says clearly communicating a vision, treats people with respect, solicits contrary opinions, encourages other people's ideas. Now, all four of them are very important. I'll repeat, clearly communicate
Absolutely.
a vision, treat people with respect, solicit contrary opinions, and encourage other people's ideas. All four of them are important. However, what are the two things, Madhavi, that you have always in this long years of career that you have done, which people have always acknowledged and respected you for? And why are these two the more important for you? I'm not discounting the other two any which ways.
Sure, sure. Um, Okay, if I were to sort of force rank
Mm,
and based on the feedback that I've got from my stakeholders,
mm,
and I think over the last 30 years, I think it would be clearly communicates a vision
mm,
and gets people to work their ideas or encourages people to bring up ideas.
mm.
I think most of the line managers I've worked with would say that I've kind of have the ability to rally around people and
Mm.
get teams to do something very different, sometimes also impossible things, new things, So I think that is something that would come as a feedback. And ideation actually works hand in hand with the vision, because you might
Yes.
have a vision, but to get to that vision or to get to things to execute that whatever is required needs ideation. And frankly, I think my teams were much better at ideation than I was. So and they still are actually. They've been able to take a thought or an idea or an ambition and come up with spectacular sort of impactful processes and products, and this has happened over the years. I guess I've been fortunate to have super teams,
Mm.
and I always tell them, it's amazing how the teams that I've worked with, they just take something and make it so great. I mean, it's sort of, I think human ability sort of continues to amaze in that sense.
It is, it is, it is. Actually, right, because the more you are able to encourage people's ideas, you get so much more out of their head. They're all wise, wiser probably than us. It, by not doing it, we are limiting the opportunities so much, isn't it? By doing the other one, we are able to get so much more, which would have just got buried in the head if you had not done that.
Rajiv, you asked that question about why is it so important in current scenario about
Uh,
involving more people. Also, look at you see a few years back, maybe 30
uh,
years ago, you had expertise. Somebody had an expertise, and they kind of knew it all because the dimensions were smaller. I mean,
hmm,
today you need that collaboration. You need more and more people
yeah,
involved to be able to develop, because there's just so many things happening. The world is evolving so rapidly. If you don't have all the eggs in one basket, you won't be able to do spectacular things.
so and you can't have all the eggs within yourself, so you need to go and get it from
Absolutely.
people who are all around you, right? Very well, very
Absolutely.
well. So this when you work with people, when you get them to generate ideas, there could be certain occasions where we may falter, we may make a mistake in the way we said something or did something that could probably upset the other person. because you're constantly working with them and generating their ideas. And this is where Marshall also ties up to the very powerful concept and calls it the magic move, apologizing. For a moment, it may sound a little theoretical, not so very practical. How do you interpret it, Madhavi? And any
Again,
incident that you can narrate for the young leaders that this is what happened and this is how you handled it and did that magic move by which they also could do it.
I think again, one of the insights of this book that's I think so powerful. You know, when it's such a simple thing, we underestimate the possibility. You know,
Mm,
of just apologizing. And he shared a few examples from really big leaders. You know, I think apologizing. I mean, shows that you're human, you're vulnerable.
mm,
I think it shows you're real. You know, and shows ownership. So I think just because as a leader, if you can accept that you've made a mistake or you've said, you've done something wrong, I think the team then starts trusting you. uh,
mm,
and I think more than just the immediate impact of the trust, I think it kind of, from my perspective, it creates a culture in the organization where people can openly talk about mistakes they've made or slippages they've had. And I think it just creates a very open and honest culture in the organization, which is so important in today's day and age. I mean,
yeah,
so I think Marshall was ahead of his time at that point to make this sort
definitely,
of
definitely.
statement. I think I've apologized umpteen times. My mantra is: if you made a mistake, just be honest and start course correction right away, rather than you let it fester and grow and then kind of have a challenge. It's not easy all the time, I
Yeah,
must say. For if you're going to start tomorrow and say I'm going to be able to apologize, it's not
mm,
easy,
yeah,
because we're conditioned as we grow up to not accept our we accept our sort of mistakes. Right from school, when you haven't done your homework, you don't tell the
mm,
teacher you haven't done your homework. You make an excuse, I was ill or something. So i think
correct.
i think that we have to get over that conditioning, especially in the corporate world, to be able to just say sorry, it's made a mistake, I overlooked it, or and I won't. And of course, when you apologize, it's not just the apologizing. I think when you really you have to mean it, and then you have to rectify that, and make sure it doesn't
Beautiful.
happen again.
Yeah, yeah,
It
which is
has
what.
to be apology, learning from it, and then not repeating in the future.
Yeah, yeah, correct. Because apologizing without any new action or a different action is baseless.
But it's Rajiv. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that in many times in your kind of experience as well. It is such a powerful thing. If you have a team you're working with, and a cross-functional team, and you miss some deadline, and if you can just pick up the phone and tell the other team, listen, I'm sorry, I missed this deadline.
Yeah.
Can you just give me one more day? I think people just find that so useful, because and you will find that other people say sure, no problem, because you owned up your mistake, rather than saying that not accepting your delay or your
True,
mistake,
true,
right?
true. I think end of the day, it only shows that everyone around us are human beings and not robots, and they are also as human as we would want
Absolutely.
them to be. Just that we have this fear ki, if I go and apologize, I'm going to get the back from the person, so we wouldn't want to do that. Some element of fear, and two, I don't want to be embarrassed and feel something else, so I don't want to do that. But I think the younger, how do you see the young people with whom you work?
I think the new generation is much better at apologizing than we were ever were. Maybe our school conditioning was much more different than what it is today. But I think I find that the new generation is far more sort of open and honest, and be able to say that we've not done it, or we can't do it, or whatever.
I agree with you. They don't just shy away. They just किया है नहीं किया sorry. Now tell me what do we do?
It's a
Very
good, it's a
clear
good
thing.
thing. It's a good thing, yes.
Actually, very good thing. Lovely. So as you are talking about apologizing and all of this stuff, another thing which is for me one of the most fundamental skill, yet the most ignored skill by very many leaders, and as recent as 1 month back or 2 months back with the vice president, retail head, that kind of a position, we had to tell him, this is something that you're not doing. And Marshall talks about this. The difference between near greats and greats is as simple as listening, right? One tip that you would want to give: how do I become that from a near great to a great by being a good listener?
I would say, try and sort of always be aware of how you are perceived and how will you get that feedback. I think you will
Right.
have to listen to what people have to say, and be, like Marshall says, be non-judgmental about it. When somebody gives us feedback, we try to react to it. I think the idea is not to react to it. I think reflect on it. Just say thank you for the feedback. Don't commit on any act. He says don't commit on any actions. Hear them out, and then internalize it and figure out what is it that you will do differently. What you stop doing, continue doing. Start doing, and that itself should be a sort of the first move really, I would say. And I think gather the courage to build that discipline around this process of getting feedback, acting on it, and and measuring your success.
Right. Any one person in your long career that you always felt, if I had to put a list of top 3 best listeners in my life, I would take this person as the number 1 slot. What do you think he or she did very differently because of which he or she earned that first slot in your own list? Anyone that you can share?
So there's one person, I won't name the person, it'll be embarrassing for the person. I haven't told them that I'm going to name them, but there's one person who I think for me is very inspirational, and I think for me the thing that the person did very well was care for every single person as an individual. I think that to my mind was something that made that person a great leader.
Right. And he was always willing to listen and.
Yes, so if there were times when he would come out of a meeting and he would ask each one of us, saying, "How did I fare?" And there were actually people who told him, "You messed up. Sorry, boss, you messed up. You did this wrong." And to accept that feedback as a line manager, to hear that statement that you messed up, and he talked about it very openly. He said, in the last meeting, I spoke to this person and he or she told me I messed up, so I'm not going to do it again. And please let me know when I'm doing anything wrong. I think that was, to my mind, spectacular.
That needs so much of courage and confidence. Forget about humility. You need so much of that, right, to do it.
Brilliant.
Seriously, lovely. So this is very nice. So I'm going to ask you the last one to keep it quick and free you off with your other work of the day. And it's also a Navratri day, so I'm hoping some celebration there.
I lost the last.
Any Navratri celebration that side?
No, not really. All at home.
All at home. Okay. All right. So this is lovely conversation on this particular book. Thank you for coming and talking on this, Madhavi. So I'm going to ask you the last question of this conversation. Over the last so many years of experience that you have garnered, what is one non-negotiable character that has brought you till here, or got you till here, and will get you there? If I can rename the title.
one non-negotiable. I have many actually.
Talk about 2 then. Talk about 2. Which has really helped you a lot?
I think I would say integrity, definitely. And I think a can-do attitude. I generally have a can-do attitude. I mean, I don't say no to start with. If something comes up, I try to figure out how things can, be worked out. And like I said, when I think something is not possible, I don't say no. I talk to my team saying, this is something we need to do. Is it possible? Any ideas around it? So I think those 2 for me work all the time.
Integrity and can do. Well, if these are not the only advices, any 2 laser sharp advice to the budding leaders in the context of the current leadership space that they are all operating, which is very different to the world in which you started when you initially grew up to become the first time manager, then became leader and all that. Any 2 laser sharp advice?
If I were to pick, honestly, I mean, there are many, but I'll really top 2. I think become an expert in one area. Don't be jack of all trades and master of none. Pick up one expertise, one area that you should be an expert in. And of course, then you can broaden your horizon, but remain the expert in one area. And I think the second advice that I would give you as you go through your leadership journey, always remember to treat your teams as you would like to be treated by a leader.
True. Yeah. I like both of them are good one. The first one, I like it. The more you go vertically down, it's all about excellence, right? Then opportunities start coming up so much. You're so right. Thank you so much, Madhavi, for coming on this event, joining the forces, having this chat with us. I had a lovely conversation. It was enjoyable. I hope you also had a good time.
My pleasure, Rajiv. Thanks to you. I'm reading this book again and learning more and more. Thank you very much.
Pleasure talking to you. Look forward to see you sometime when we start flying out as it was earlier.
Certainly. All the best. Stay safe. Thank you.
Same to you. All the best. See you soon. Bye.